good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining another Panos webinar. My name is Ashley Sutton. I am the marketing specialist here at Panos. And today we are joined by some of our most esteemed colleagues here at Panos. So I will let you all introduce yourselves.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, hi, I'm Alina McGinty, and I am a senior graphic designer here at Panos.
Hi, I'm Katelyn Murtagh. I am a project manager with account services here at Panos.
My name is Paul Tonelli. I'm the creative director here at Panos.
All right, so we will just jump right into it. So to sort of get started with this conversation, I'm going to ask a very complex question. But why is a brand so important?
Well, I can jump in real quick. I mean, it's pretty obvious that there's an audience out there looking at all brands, but certainly, bank brands, and they're out there and they want to make a choice, right? So they need to associate themselves with a financial institution they can trust. So your brand is really important. It positions you in the marketplace as someone you can trust. And I think that's one of the more important things, is to really align yourself with the things they're looking for.
Awesome. Again, super complicated question. But so as we sort of dive into these conversations with clients, I was wondering if you could sort of talk us all through, and Katelyn is here because Katelyn has a lot of experience speaking with our clients about, refreshing their brand or even creating a whole new brand. So if you guys want to sort of dive into, how do you start to make a brand? Regardless of whether it's from the scratch or whether you're refreshing an existing brand.
Well, I think some of it, there's a couple of reasons why for rebranding. First of all, I think it comes from, if you have an older brand and you really need to refresh and modernize, you want to be where your customers are and you want to be relatable to who your customers currently are. And if your brand is several years old and you're not relating to them any longer, then that's going to be a problem and they're not going to stick around. Another big reason is acquisition and mergers. So if you have especially two separate brands coming together in a merger and you need to create one unified defined brand going forward, so that way you can relate to your new customers. And then finally, I think if you're expanding into a new market and a new area, if your brand is very location based and you're outside of that, they might not know who you are. So sometimes rebranding in that will get you into that new footprint, so that way your message will translate to those people.
I think that's, we see that all the time, where there's, this need to not just look better, but to kind of connect with an audience that maybe is outside of your footprint. And it's a new name to them, right? So it's entering their territory. And, how does that brand resonate to them, to an audience that's not used to seeing you? So normally, what you try to do is go back to the beginning. What do you do really well? What are the things that you believe, are important enough, to highlight and be part of your brand story? And then, it always ends up, being something that is fun too, because, the process isn't just, okay, we're doing something we don't want to do. You're actually creating, something really beautiful and for the brand, and you get involvement by participants, sort of employees of the brand, to be a part of that process. And what we found, through doing, a lot of them, is that, those employees really feel a part of, what's moving forward for their FI. It's like, I work here, and now I'm a part of actually the process. And I know, Alina, as you, develop, some of the designs for, the banks that we've worked on, I mean, and during those presentations, you can see the excitement.
Yeah, for sure. I think, once we start doing the discovery process, like you said, and people know it's coming and are, anticipating excitement and have put in their input, and it builds on itself, the excitement, and to reveal the visuals and the messaging, and seeing that all aligned with, the brand values and what they're trying to say to their communities, like, people get really excited and jazzed up. It's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of employees that all they've ever seen are the core values written on a poster in the kitchen, and that's what they think brand is, or their logo is their brand. Most people know this, but we start right out of the gate, and mentioning to people. That's like, your brand isn't your colors or your logo. It's what's in the heart and minds of your audience. And again, trying to make that connection with them is the main goal of rebranding, whether you're refreshing or just, getting something new out into the marketplace, is really to make that connection. So they're really important. And once you get those employees involved, they start seeing the bigger picture. It's like, it's not just, a logo or a tagline. It's really how we speak about ourselves, and those little subtle things that we do on a day-to-day basis, whether it's in the lobby or on even online, when people are going to experience the brand, what does that feel like? And those employees having a part of that process always makes them feel good.
Yeah, it's really part of building a community, within your institution and also outside of your institution, right? Where you're speaking to your customers, but you need your, employees all aligned with that same goal and same message. So getting them involved early is really, really good.
Right. So I know, Katelyn, we've worked on a couple of these together, and, part of that communication with the client, it starts obviously at the beginning, but they have to be bought, they have to buy in, right? They have to believe in it. And what are some of those conversations like when you're, just at the beginning stages of a brand development project?
Really it's a conversation. Every client is so different too, all the ones we've done together, Paul. But it really is just a conversation to figure out what is important to each bank, what's important to their vision, what's important to their mission. And some of those things, like you said, are written on a poster in the break room. But is that really what's important to the employees? Is that really what's important to the community? And does that resonate with them? And taking what they think is important and what makes them different than everyone else and all the other banks on the street, and really taking it to the next level and being able to put that in the messaging and put that in the overall brand, so that it becomes something that everyone believes in, because you need the buy-in from your employees too. And if they are giving their opinion from the very beginning about what they think is working and what's really important, it creates a culture that people will believe in and be super excited when that brand presentation is delivered and they're seeing the results of the new refreshed brand. So we want to just have a conversation and figure out what's important to them and make sure that that's the highlight going forward. And that's what will resonate with their employees, and that's what their customers will be able to feel that.
There's a perception in the marketplace of a bank's brand, of every brand, right? If you've used something, it was either a good experience or a bad experience, or you're undecided, but there's something on your mind about that brand if you've had some interaction with it. So the audience is important. We've talked about that a little bit. The bank itself they have plans for their brand. Like, they want something, they have a vision, in place. Now the trick is, does that vision align with the audience? Because it could be just one-sided. You could want all these things, but it's meaningless if it's not connecting with the audience. So, the vision is certainly one part of the puzzle, and then the audience desires is one, but then there's also how you execute on it. What is that fulfillment that you do on a daily basis as an organization? So that internal culture, what you how you say hello. We often hear, oh, we know everyone's name that walks in the lobby. Well, you don't know everyone's name that goes on the website. So you're going to have to figure out your brand, today's brand, and what that digital brand is like. So the conversation gets a little bit bigger. It's not just about human interaction. It's about the experience through all the platforms that your message is out there. So, again, just to sort of punctuate that, it's sort of the vision, of your leadership, mostly the culture that you've put in place, and then the audience. When you pull those three things together, that's how you start to formulate, how to kind of build a brand. So when we do that brand discovery, that's where it all begins. We tend to put groups together for that. It's always a little bit, people are shy. They don't really want to express themselves in a forum. So they might, hold back. So we put it upon the bank to put together the right group of people so that there's a connection. They know their people better than we do. So we certainly can go down the line and go, you go into a group, but it's certainly not the thing to do when you're trying to get people in a room to open up and give us some feedback on what they believe the customer or the member is feeling, or what you're feeling as an employee as you walk the halls. Are you empowered to actually answer questions, or you feel like maybe you could be given a little bit more latitude on speaking to customers a certain way and solving their problems?
And I think that's a great way to segue into a question that we did receive from one of our attendees, where they're asking how is the bank's existing customer base, how do they sort of play into the direction or the evolution of the brand? How significant is the existing role? And then the same kind of goes for the employees. So how much of that input is actually played into that final product or that final review?
Well, you'd be surprised, but it's an awful lot because they're handing it to us. Like it's really personal to them. And some banks, many banks have employees that have been there a long time. So their voice and their perspective is really important. But also the new employee that is feeling that impression for the first time. Is it a good one? Is it a bad one? Is it aligning with what the bank is saying or believing that they are? So when we gather that information, in addition to all the other information that we're gathering, external research or whatever it might be, you start building that story. Also solutions for the bank. Say, you're falling a little short here. Maybe this is an area, where you need to concentrate a little bit more on, because it's not just about, creating a pretty brand. It's about developing the culture too. And it's helping the organization be better, to see the warts they may have and try to fix them based off of the conversations that we're having, with the employees.
I think too, to go off of what Paul said too, with the culture, is if your brand is defined, the employees you're going to retain and the employees you're going to get, if they identify with that culture because it's already an existing piece of who you are, I feel like your employees are more likely to stick around because their values and your values all align. So that helps with customer retention and employee retention too.
And also building that brand so that you can send a message out for new recruits. So now you know who you are, right? It's like this is how we roll, at X bank. So now you know what type of person that you want to employ, and then people look at you with a little bit of a, hey, they know what they're doing over there, and I want to be a part of that team.
So we kind of touched about a little bit about what we're looking for in a discovery. But is there anything more that you're looking for when we start pulling in these groups into these discovery sessions? The bank has chosen who they think would be best in these types of situations. So what are we looking for, big picture or small picture?
Yeah, I think there's an impression that the employee has, whether you're a brand that has values that, are a certain type of, approach to their work every day. If you think of, big brands, national brands, you can automatically connect with whether they're a hardworking brand or they're about safety like Volvo, or, they're Honda and they're dependable. Those are the little nuances that we like to pull out from the discovery to see how we can develop a message that really aligns with that. Because as I said earlier, you want to support that and fulfill on that promise that you're making, within your message and your, creative approach. So you have to fulfill on it. So if you don't know what the truth is, you don't know what you're actually good at, then you're lying, right? So you want to make sure that those little pieces of the real personality of the organization is brought to the, to the messaging at some level.
So as far as, we've gotten to this point where we've discussed the brand discovery, the bank has chosen who they want to be part of that process. So kind of my next question is segueing into what are they really buying? What is the bank buying as far as working with Panos, but also what is the customer buying?
Well, I'll say that when we do the discovery and we spend time with the client and we do some external research, We do some competitive analysis. We look at their existing materials, in other things, and we're pooling all that together to create a refreshed story. We're not looking to change them. We're just looking to enhance and have an organization evolve, because there's always equity. I mean, unless you're really going down the tubes. I mean, there's equity in a brand. So it's important to bring that along with you, and add on to it with the things that you've learned. So that deliverable, that first deliverable, is what we call either a vision report or reveal report, which is what we heard. We heard this from your employees, from your customers, if we're doing that level of research, from your community. This is what we learned about your competition. This is what we see as the opportunity for your organization to find an open space out there that really works for you, because there is competition. So you don't want to be doing the same thing that your competition is doing. So that's a big part of what we give back to the client, is that understanding of where the open space is, that they can start playing with a certain type of creative, a certain type of message that they can own. And when they look at that, there's a conversation. We dig in a little bit deeper, really fine tune it, and then once that's approved, we start working towards a creative approach. So it's not a creative deliverable right out of the gate. It's more of a this is what we heard, and this is our direction on which way to go. But it's not full on creative. When Alina can really dig into her crayon box and do all these wonderful things, along with our writing team, to really put messaging and design together to formulate that brand.
And then I'm gonna kind of throw this over to Alina. What are those brand elements? So when we get to that design phase of everything, and we bring in our designers and our copywriters, what are the different elements that you put together?
Yeah. So, I mean, a big part of it, like Paul mentioned, copywriting is huge. So the first place to start is sort of defining, like, once we get all the data and answered questions, and we kind of need to define, what your brand values are, what your, voice and personality is going to be, and that sort of stuff. And so that really helps launch into the visuals as well, because, you kind of have to figure out, are they more playful? Are they, what kind of voice and tone and personality do you want to put out in the world? So messaging is huge, and we work together with our great copywriters to, mesh visuals and blinking, sorry, messaging. So, and then what we would deliver, it depends on the client. It depends on what kind of rebrand we're doing or fresh brand we're doing. Some, we're doing the logo over. And so, we'll give options, of course, and explore different ideas for that. Sometimes once you get down that road, so we choose a logo, we choose colors, we choose what the photography style should be, the fonts, all that stuff. Then we're gonna want you to have something to hold close and dear and share, that you can keep consistent with. So we provide a pretty, pretty robust, usually, guide of sorts on branding elements and all the stuff you would need visually, but also, message style guides in a way, and making sure that from your ads to your social media, everything has the same, voice and sounds like you. So.
Yeah, if I could just jump on that, because I think Alina is being a little modest in what that delivery is and what she delivers in the team, in the creative team that works with her. We work really hard to make sure that message and that story is in place. So those photos, that photo direction is really geared towards the message. So it's not just a pretty picture. It's one that was really thought through to say, okay, this is the direction of the photography, so that it really hits the mark when we're talking to the audience and it aligns with the message. So it's really crystal clear that when this guideline is put together, this toolbox is put together, that there's a direction on how to pick photography. It's not, just jumping on, a stock site and grabbing, the pretty picture of the mom and dad. It's that specific style. So that, would be for that particular brand. But also, as Alina mentioned, we put together a messaging platform, which includes boilerplate, but also just how to write it. Because we're not, as an agency, we're not always going to be the company working on the materials. Like a lot of banks have an internal marketing team. They have graphic designers. They'll use outside resources for different things. So that toolbox, that guideline is very important. And that's going back to the beginning of this conversation. Sometimes that's the reason to start this whole thing, is that they're all over the place.
That's true.
And they work with different vendors, and they're looking at all their materials and going, wow, we're a mess. We need panos, right? And so we go through this whole process to get to the point where they can have this toolbox that's specifically for them, but also is kind of something they can use with outside vendors to make sure that they're keeping the guardrails up and not kind of straying out into the open field and doing whatever they want to do. Because designers are wonderful people, but they love the design. And sometimes, their creativity will take them in places that, is just creative, and it could be outside of the box, but you want to make sure that your box is clearly defined.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you might have one-off things here and there, but even still, like, they should, align with the brand. It's really hard if, someone sees something in the marketplace and they don't know that it's you. Like, you don't want that. You don't want anyone to question, like, what happened here. There's been examples like, you would be weirded out if your neighbor, who always has a beautiful yard, just all of a sudden stopped mowing it and it starts looking terrible or whatever. You would kind of wonder. You would probably go check up on that neighbor and be like, what's up?
You're messing with our neighborhood brand, right?
Yeah, exactly. But when things are just, you're not expecting, it just doesn't seem right, then the customers are going to know. They're going to see. So.
I would add, from a practical standpoint, that, hey, we have to move fast. Banking, doesn't wait for anybody, right? Rates change, the landscape changes, and we need to respond quickly. So having that, that go-to, toolbox, keeps us in line, but also keeps us moving at a pace that we need to, move at. And not to say that we're templatizing things, but like, okay, we're not going to stray beyond our fonts. These are our fonts. These are our colors. The things that are going to help Katelyn do her job with her client, so they're not yelling, but sort of, saying, you missed the deadline. That's the most important part. One of the most important parts of our jobs is hitting those deadlines.
I think you all did a really good job, explaining such a complex thing in such a short amount of time. Because I know when we're speaking with clients, these tend to be very long conversations, because again, there is that misconception that brand is just a logo or a color. But when it comes to working with panos, we really like to dig deep and remind you that it's not just that. It's so much more. It's about who you are and the message that you want to carry throughout your market in specific. But I don't have any more questions. I wasn't sure if anybody else had, any last minute advice that they want to give to any of our attendees, or anything like that.
It makes the designer's job easier the more information we have about you and your brand and your audience. So, and all of that stuff, all of that hard work we put up front is super important for us to visually display, who you are to the world. So, it's a tough process, but it's also fun, and there's a lot to it. It's one of the things I enjoy most.
Great. Well, again, thank you all for joining us today, and also thank you to our wonderful panelists. If anybody has any questions or would like to reach out to us, you can reach out to me at a7@panosmarketing.com. And the same for everybody else on this call, A. Murtagh at Panos Marketing, P. Tonelli at Panos Marketing, and A. McGinty at Panos Marketing. So thank you all for joining. Have a great day.
Thank you.
I think.
Bye.
Bye.